All right, so here we go on our lesson about absolute value. The essential question of today's lesson that you should be able to answer is, how do you find and use absolute value? So in this, breaking it down, we should be able to identify the absolute value of any number and then also compare that absolute value. And that comparing part is going to be pretty tough. What I want to draw your attention to is that absolute value is always going to be non-negative, because absolute value always tells us the number's distance. It never talks about direction. So students often confuse absolute value and opposites, and we have to make sure that we remember absolute value is not going to have that negative symbol ever, because it's just talking about distance, whereas opposites talk about distance and direction. All right, so here, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to practice graphing these numbers on your own. When you look at my graph and you come back, you'll notice that these different colors will be where the other or where those numbers are plotted. When you come back, we'll check your work. All right, so you should have found that your graph looks something like this, where you have the -7, and I've graphed it in red, 5 is in the orange, -4, -2, 4, and 7. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're really going to just practice absolute value. Okay, and absolute value tells us, remember, the number's distance from 0. So if we're looking for the absolute value of -7, we're just looking at how far away is it from 0. So we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So the absolute value of -7 is going to be 7. It doesn't matter that we went to the right. It doesn't matter that we started in the negatives. We're just looking at how far away is it from 0. So then let's try 5. So 5 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces from 0. So the absolute value of 5 is 5. Okay, again, it doesn't matter where it is on the number line or which direction you had to go to get to 0. All that matters is how far away is it from 0. So now what I would like you to do is I would like you to try C through F on your own, and when you come back, we'll check your answers. All right, so you should have found that your answers were 7, 2, 4, and 4. And then what we're going to look at is, what do you notice when you have absolute values of two numbers that are opposites? You should notice that those absolute values are the same, which would make sense based on the definition of opposites, because they're the same distance from 0, just in opposite directions. So since absolute value focuses on distance and opposites are the same distance, it would make sense that they have the same absolute value. All right, now we're going to look at comparing those absolute values, and this is where it's going to get a little bit confusing, a little tough, and I'm just going to ask that you try and make sure that if you're struggling with it, ask questions, slow down. Slowing down is a big part of this too, because I will tell you that even when I'm thinking about it, it trips me up from time to time. So go slow. All right, so we want to know, does Maria owe more than $30 or less than $30? We know her credit card balance is less than -30. Okay, so her balance is less than -30. So if you look at a number line, we have 0, -30. Anything that has a value, so this is in terms of value, anything that has a value of less than 30 is going to be this way. And we know as our numbers go this way, it goes -31, -32. So their value gets smaller, but the amount gets higher. So what we do is we use absolute value and we say, okay, the absolute value, so what she owes is $30. The absolute values of everything that is this way on the number line, all those absolute values are going to be higher than 30. So in this case, she owes more than $30. Okay, let's try another one and take a look. Susan's credit card balance is greater than -25. Does she owe more or less than $25? Well, it's greater than -25. So if we put -25 on here, anything that's greater than negative 25 would fall in here. However, that absolute value, so what she owes is 25. Anything in here is going to have an absolute value that is less than 25, which means she owes less than $25. What I want you to do now is I'd like you to look at C and D, and I'd like you to try them on your own. I know it might be tough, but I want you to try them on your own, and when you come back, we'll check your answer. So we want to know, does George owe more than Susan or less than Susan? And his balance is 5 less than Susan's balance. So we said Susan was down here in the negative 30, and his is 5 less than Susan's. Well, anything that is less than, in this case, his credit card balance is 5 less than Susan's. So it's not that what he owes is less than, it's that his balance is 5 less than. So this negative 30, it has to be 5 less than that. Okay, so whatever is here has to be less than the negative 30. And we know that anything that has a smaller value than negative 30 is going to be this way on the number line. Okay, so in that case, he is going to owe more than Susan does because these numbers are getting larger. Oh, and I apologize, Susan was the $25, but the idea is still the same. Okay, Antonio owes 15 less than Maria owes. This means that Antonia's balance is less than or greater than Maria's balance. So he owes, and the important word here is that he owes 15 less than. So what they owe has been that absolute value. Their balance has been the value itself. Okay, so the absolute value has to be less than what Maria owes. So therefore, Antonio's balance is larger than Maria's balance. Okay, so if we look at this again, we know Maria owes more than $30. Okay, so who on here owes more than $30? Well, this one owes exactly. Owing 25 is less than. Owing 20 is less than. So this has to be Maria because what she owes is greater than $30. Susan owes less than $25. So again, we're looking at the absolute values here. Her balance, we didn't know, but we knew her balance was less than or was greater than negative 25. So what she owes is less than 25. And the only one here less than 25 is Susan. See, I told you, even I have to stop, slow down, and think. George owes more than Susan. So if George owes more than Susan, his option is 25 or 30, both of which are correct. Antonio's balance is greater than Maria's balance. Okay, so here we might have to go back a little bit more specifically and look at George. And George has a balance that is $5 less than Susan. So it's exactly $5 less than Susan's. So in this case, the $5 less than Susan's would be the 25. So this is George. And then this is Antonio. which makes sense because if you look at Antonio's, they told us that his is 15. He owes 15 less than Maria. Maria owes 45. 15 less than 45 is 30. I know this can be confusing. We will definitely work on it more in class, and it's something that you definitely have to sit down and think about because it's so opposite and so backwards it seems. This part, though, should make you feel much better because finding the absolute value, I have always found with students, is something that they enjoy because it's something that's fairly simple. So what is the absolute value of 45? Go ahead and pick your answer. And if you chose D, 45, you were correct. All right, so you need to answer the essential question, how do you find and use absolute value? And then you also need to do the guided practice problems, right? And if you don't have your notebook, I will post a screenshot of the guided practice problems on Google Classroom. As always, if you have any questions, please be sure to email me or write them down so we can go over them in class.